Okay, so after much wailing and gnashing of teeth, we have the V, which is this guy, in the V assembly jig, which is this guy. It's the second of 4 jigs we're going to be using. So this is one, if you remember, that we used to file the edge. So the rail went in that hole. A piece of rail to demonstrate. Rail goes in this hole, and you use it to file the angle. And then there's these two, which you use to assemble it into a V at the correct angle here. You can see these are both 1 in 8, and I think I had some trouble with this V. It's my first time doing a 1 in 8. Normally I'm doing a 1 in 6, which I'll show here. Now, as you can see, the angle on the 1 in 6 is very much more obtuse than the 1 in 8. I mean, it means the track work's going to look really nice when it's finished, but it introduces a problem. The rail itself is only 1 millimeter by 0.5 millimeter, so it has some flex in it. You know, it's not rigid like in larger scales. So when you're doing curves and alignments that are very wide, in this case very acute, and in case of the wing rails that will go either side here, yeah, there'll be one rail that goes in this slot on this side and one rail that goes in that slot. Those angles are very wide, and it means that just the rail can just distort very slightly while it's in the jig. Even if you so it will fit, but it will fit because it's distorted, and that's what happened with this V. Held in this alignment here, it seemed perfectly fine, but this aluminium jig here is much more strict. You can you can see that the rail in on this side, the rail comes in, and this diamond here, that tip is where the maximum end of the V needs to be, and it's right up against it. But you see it's got this inside gauge, the outside gauge, and the end gauge, whereas here only has the inside and the outside. So it means that the angle on this must be set perfectly, otherwise it won't fit. And I just couldn't get it to fit. Part of that was my fault from not filing one of the V's properly, and the other one was just trial and error. I had to hold the rail in this jig and hold a soldering iron to the end and shuffle the straight V rail back and forth and test it in here, and back and forth and test it in here, just to make sure that it was perfect. Normally you can look down the rail, and I'll remove this here. Normally you can look down the rail and you can see, oh, there's a little hump there, and hopefully this looks pretty good to the naked eye. I mean, I would have said there was a gap there, like the V wasn't smooth enough, but all the time I was doing that, it wasn't fitting into this assembly jig. So the next step is to get some wing rails in there, and I'll probably get ones that are slightly over scale, because if you remember, we're building a slip, so we're building here, so one wing rail will be there and the other one will be there, and they need to be electrically isolated. So where these lines are, that's where the electrical break will be, somewhere around there. So I'll cut and measure those. They'll get assembled into here. And one of the things that would be helpful to do, I'm not even going to try and do that with one hand. You can see I've scribed this. Hopefully you can see this line, and that is the perfect center of the crossing. So that's when I bend my V rails to fit in this hole. I can align the kink in them with here, and that will hopefully ensure there's as little distortion as possible. But also what I need to do is actually bind it all together, and so the way you do that is by soldering either bits of etch or chair plates to the underside, because this is you're soldering it upside down, and then you flip it and you drop it onto the layout here. I need to find a way to transpose where these timbers are onto this jig, because I need to put the chair plates or the etch or whatever I'm going to use to hold this assembly together between the sleepers, because I'm soldering direct to the sleepers. So there needs to be something that lays between the two. So when I've discovered how to transpose the sleeper locations to here, and when I've cut and added the wing rails, that'll be the next video.